right. Looks like we have success there. Thanks, Sebastian. So the first item on the agenda, or shall I say, the most highly upvoted topic for discussion, is a MATLAB roadmap. So yeah, certainly open to hearing anybody's thoughts here. It was not a particularly pointed discussion topic, but I guess a good question is, what would people like to see for a roadmap? What kinds of things? What would a roadmap even mean for MATLib? I think this is an important question.
Well, maybe we're missing some portions of mathematics that, there's some areas which people look at MATLib and they say, like, well, I can't do project X because it's missing this huge area that everyone knows about, and for 100 years, are there any areas like that we're still majorly missing, that we need to develop more? Like we have this undergraduate partial. We had this undergraduate curriculum thing going for a while. Are we done with that? Like, do we need to? Are we gonna be done with that? Is that still on the roadmap? Was that ever a roadmap item? How does that work?
I think there's sort of an exponential decay of like items on that list, and like certain items will probably take a while.
I definitely have a plan for someone to work on one of them.
We want them.
You said it's not clear we want them?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some decay of items, which is like important to us, right? The undergraduate curriculum was for a different purpose, right? And it might not actually be relevant to us to have literally everything on that list.
It was a great motivator at one point when we had very little of it, but it's hardly high priority right now.
Yeah, we're generally about a roadmap. I think it's a bit tricky because like we have like a very open model in MATLAB where everyone just contributes to like whatever they want to. I think that like most of the important areas like people are working on. When I try to find like topics for students, like it definitely isn't always very easy because like most things are in MATLAB or people are working on that or just are for the moment out of reach.
Yeah, we do. People do work on what they want to work on, but also it's fairly frequent situation that we have excited people who don't know what they want to work on, and it's valuable for us to have a list of things that are like things that we consider important and would love to see someone pick up, right? And it's quite often the case that
I could give you
that's. Go ahead.
Is there a huge delay? Sorry, I'm in Singapore airport. I could give you a list of 20 things I need for Fermat, but I'm not entirely sure that's the MATLib roadmap. That's like the Fermat roadmap. But I could definitely pass it off as a MATLib roadmap if you want a roadmap.
Yeah, I think having I think maybe a potential way to deal with this, because it's hard to have a roadmap for areas in which we don't have experts, right? And here you sort of need both, to some extent, both lean experts and experts in that area of mathematics, right?
Well, we don't need that. We don't need we need the experts in order to make progress on the roadmap. We don't need the experts in order to have the roadmap, right? We can say this is the thing that we care about, but it's not happening until someone shows up.
Well,
Hey,
yeah, but what I mean is if you're going to have a thing where you can easily point new contributors to say, hey, go work on this, then you sort of need someone to be able to lead them in that, right?
I think it depends also on the granularity. Like if you just want to say, oh, we want partial differential equations and Fourier analysis and this other topic, I mean, then you don't need to be an expert, but probably you need to be quite a bit more granular, like in like what topics come next, and then you need to know the mathematics, like at least somewhat.
Well, I mean, I really hope if we're giving guidance to people, I hope that it's not partial differential equations, is the entirety of it, right? At the very least, it would be like, okay, here's a book that contains a bunch of results that we think are important or something like that, right? If you're a new person and you don't know much about partial differential equations and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to learn as I go, that on its own is just useless, right? So
Yeah.
to the extent that we can help, I mean, it's sort of like a roadmap, or like a roadmap in the or blueprint, right? Like we'd like to have a blueprint for where MATLAB is going, and that's going to involve more work than just saying area of mathematics.
But
Yeah,
so
I
is
think-
this roadmap mostly to for like new users to like find topics on like what to work on, or are there other people that would like to see some kind of roadmap, like for example the FRO or other interested parties to see like what MATLAB is planning to do? Because I'm not quite sure what indeed we want from the roadmap.
I think multiple people want things from the roadmap, and I'm sure that those things don't align. And I mean, I'm not sure, as far as like, well, what the FRO cares about, like knowing where we're going to go in the future. I'm not sure we can answer that question, right? Because of the way that we're sort of driven by individual whims to some extent. It's not really easy for us to say like what's going to be in MATLAB in a month. We can talk about the things that we think are important, but like the relation, yeah, like I said, the relationship of that to what actually gets done is just extremely diffuse.
So there's a comment in the chat. Richard says there's two questions. What are the important theorems that MATLAB wants, and how would MATLAB plan on getting them? I mean, I think one thing that we probably need is some collection of, even if it's non-exhaustive, of curated lists. I don't think they should be curated at the level of an actual lean blueprint, or maybe they would be in some cases, but a lot of times I feel like blueprints have been suited for better for separate projects that like live in a separate repo and things like that. But nevertheless, having curated lists, I know we've tried to use like the GitHub projects feature in the past, which maybe has not been so successful. That doesn't mean that it's impossible for it to be successful, but yeah, I feel like we need a way to actually track progress, but then also we need people curating lists of things to do.
I think indeed, like some kind of list of theorems that is somewhat similar to like the undergraduate list or the MATLAB overview list, but like with theorems that are sort of within reach of MATLAB and that we would like to have or somewhat prioritize. I think that could be very useful. It's a bit more open-ended than some of our other lists, so I'm not quite sure what we like, how to avoid the fact that just everyone puts everything on there, but
Yeah, I mean, I would say once you get a quorum of things that are in a related area, Like, let's say you have a bunch of theorems on this list, and a bunch of them are related, then at some point you should split that off into something more specific and perhaps with more guidance.
I feel like we do need a lot of like mathematician input on these sorts of things. Like, you know, if you ask one person and they look at they look at the math of it, this has everything I need, and what's the problem? And then you ask a different person, they're like, oh, this doesn't have any symplectic topology in it. Where is it? You know, you really need to ask the right people in order to find out what are the important theorems that are missing, because importance is in the eye of the beholder. So yeah, I mean, I think it will take some talking to a bunch of people in order to actually find that list. Because yeah, making it on our own, I don't even know. Like, yeah, I don't know how people feel about that.
Sorry, I don't think I understand the alternative to making it on our own.
Well, so the question is really like how, like, in order to find the theorems, we have to talk to the people who want the theorems, and those people might not be MATLAB contributors, right? So I'm thinking like, talking to the people who maybe would have considered lean if it wasn't, not supporting their area of expertise in, they don't have the fundamental theorem of, gizmos. I don't even know. That's the problem, right? I mean, this could just be a me problem. I'm guessing that, most people, they don't know all of the math going on in the other mathematical areas, and they don't know what are the important theorems and so on. You really do need someone from that area. And I think that for the most part, the progress in MATLAB in these areas has really been driven by mathematicians who were already involved in those areas, before they came to Lean. We need those people to be setting the roadmap. So really, this has to be like a very community driven kind of task. It's not something that like a couple people can just write down.
Here's a random piece of information. I have, there's an Imperial undergraduate currently doing a year at EPFL, and they are working with Viasovska, the Fields medalist, on her 8-dimensional sphere packing theorem. And that would be a great thing to have on some kind of, I think there's preliminary stuff missing there. That Viasovska would be in, I mean, she would know what was missing, but somehow wouldn't know how to make it because it's the student doing all the work. Is that the kind of thing that we're thinking about when it comes to roadmaps? Could that turn into a roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great example of a target theorem that will generate a bunch of intermediate results, right? And areas that are required to build those. I know in particular that for Viasovska's theorem, that was originally one of Rob's plans for formalizing in Lean back in like 2016. So it'll be really cool to see that finally come to Lean now.
Yes. Another example, did you see Stefan Tekivus appeared on the chat today? He's some prestigious German professor. And he just randomly said, oh, I've come to do Neven-Linner theory. And so suddenly I'm thinking, well, Neven-Linner theory, that should be on the roadmap because that's a completely reasonable, graduate course that one could give. And that's certainly something that we could aim for the main theorems. So there's plenty of ideas out there. It's just a case of how to put it all together.
Jerry, you're muted.
Sorry. Richard asked in the chat, could it be reasonable to create blueprints for tractable theorems without any commitment to working on them directly? In other words, expect users to come along and contribute as they have time and energy. I'm not sure how difficult or involved creating and maintaining a blueprint is.
I think writing a whole blueprint is a lot of work, and that is not probably not reasonable to expect for someone to just write a couple of blueprints for a couple results.
Yeah, I think you don't want to actually start on a blueprint until like the plan and the people are in the room and so on, and you're starting to think about how to actually get it done. I think that having the data, like doing data collection, though, I think it's very important, right? Like, Fiasovsky's theorem, write that down, right? Remember so that later, if we're assigning projects to people, we'll have, these things that have been like, oh yeah, someone mentioned this thing, I looked and it didn't exist, or I know it didn't exist. Write that down so that later we will be able to assign it to someone or something along those lines.
One interesting thought about this, though, is creating a blueprint, if it's not your area of expertise, is probably not really feasible, at least not in a way that would be very effective. However, I think that it is clear that it's possible to have someone write a blueprint that is not an expert lean user. And so, I mean, like, this sort of happened with PFR as Tao was learning to use lean, and they created this blueprint, or he created this blueprint, and with some help, I think, but this was very effective. So I think this may be a way to actually recruit people who are not expert lean users, but are maybe on the fringes and interested into doing something to contribute.
Yeah, I think that is very true. I'm doing that right now with Christoph Thiel, who's in analysis here in Bonn. And so he and his students are writing a blueprint for a theorem to be formalized.
And certainly I've had quite a few people coming up to me saying, oh, I want to contribute to Fermat. What can I do? And I say, just wait until I put the blueprint up and then just do blueprint stuff. I think blueprint is a good way of explaining what needs to be done.
I think maybe my point about blueprint was taken a little bit too literally. The kind of blueprint I meant was actually at a much higher level. So more like areas of mathematics and theorems of mathematics that we think are important in those areas. So not just PDEs, but also like what are the key theorems, and at what point, like, PDEs, it's an area of mathematics. You'll never be able to check that off a list, right? But if you have 5 theorems in PDEs, then those you can check off a list. So I think it's very important that these items be something that one can actually mark as completed and so on. But I definitely agree that like writing a blueprint is half of the work of formalizing the theorem, right? And unless you're involved in that area, you're probably not going to be able to write the blueprint. So writing a blueprint is definitely a useful task for someone. If someone suggests a theorem, you can also like ask them to try to write the blueprint if they think the theorem is sufficiently important. It's definitely a good way to accelerate progress towards the theorem. But if we're just like gathering data regarding like things that people mention off the cuff as important things that are missing, then those presumably would not come with blueprints, and those would just be recorded for future investigation.
Well, I do feel like a few of us are talking a lot. I would be certainly interested to get other people's input as well. All right. Well, in that case, maybe let's move on. The second most upvoted on item on the agenda for today was the standard and boost stuff happening, but I think we might table that until the next community meeting where the Fro is leading, so that they can give more explanation and information about it. I think there's still some things being worked out, so maybe it's not quite time to really have a discussion about it, but that's up to the Fro members present. I'm not really gonna lead that, so in which case the sort of the next two most significant things on
Eric is asking if we want a HackMD for the meeting.
sorry, what?
Eric asked on Zulip if we should have a HackMD for the meeting.
Hack and B? What?
Like meeting notes.
Just a markdown file. Yeah.
I'm sort of creating something on the side here. But if someone else is doing it, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, we're recording now, so I think maybe we'll just skip that for this meeting.
Fair enough. Okay, so I think the next two things that were upvoted were PR review concerns and successes and avenues of communication. So maybe let's start with the avenues of communication. Yeah, I think one thing that the maintainers sort of mentioned among ourselves is that maybe we don't have very good ways for getting input from the community, and in any sort of structured way, and that's something we'd like to address. So yeah, if we have any thoughts from the community, that'd be great.
If anyone has any like stories of like things that they wanted to do or issues that they had which they weren't able to resolve very effectively, I'd also be interested to hear about that sort of thing.
Or even just ways, like information that you wanted about something but you couldn't figure out how to get it, you know.
I mean, I guess I could mention some things about that if no one else has something. I mean, the first one, just to mention it, I think I don't know. I mean, most people might be aware that that's like not directly on that roadmap, but so one thing that we tried to do and we couldn't solve easily and just abandoned it and actually ended up having to move to Isabel to do that for now was because we were using kind of pretty involved inductive, like mutual inductive types, and then reasoning about that becomes really hard. Like you just don't. I mean, essentially, we couldn't do any induction on that because things would not like the induction type the tactic says the motive is not type correct because and I know that there's some things about basically it's automatic, the things that happen under the hood when you define a mutual inductive that have to get there for that to get to work. But that's what came to mind last that question.
Do you know if there's an issue open for that
I
one?
don't know if there's an issue open for that, actually. I mean, I'd be happy to open one.
Yeah, I mean, either an issue or a Zulip thread. I'd love to
Okay,
hear more
yeah.
information about.
I know that so the one person that was involved in that one, colleague Siddharth, one has been wanting to improve this thing for a while. But yeah, maybe it makes sense to have something to keep track of. I mean, we keep a repository with like tricky things that we found on Lean. Maybe we could put those also as issues. I mean, yeah. I guess I'm still used to people not wanting issues. I know that since the FRO that's from before the FRO times, but I'm used to not wanting to put up issues to normal. So.
Well, you can definitely always make an issue in the MATLAB repo, even if it's not quite
Yeah,
the best place for it. But if there's something you want to see, you can definitely create an issue there. That's no problem.
And as far as I'm aware, the same thing is true, at least at the moment, in the Lean Flow repo. If you have an issue, create one. We're happy to have a bigger listing.
Okay, well, I would definitely be interested if other people have more they want to say about issues with communication or just any
There
experiences
was
they've
something
had.
that I wanted to mention that was
So
forgot what it was. The website is very behind the times. Needs a lot of work. I think that, like, especially when it comes to communicating to new users and so on, the website's one of the first places they look. And right now, like, half of the information is still like Lean 3 vintage. So I don't know, like, whether there's something that we can do to prioritize which parts of it to work on. I mean, this is a long-standing issue, I think. But yeah, that's definitely an area that we can concretely improve.
okay, so I guess the next thing to talk about might be PR reviews, concerns, and successes. So certainly the size of the queue is something that is continually on the maintainers' minds. But we want to hear your experiences or the issues you've had with PR reviews in MATLAB and or even good experiences that you had, but we're definitely open to the bad ones too. So anything's that you could see could be improved or changed, whatever.
Hi, I've been a lurker here for quite a while, but one of the things that I found most interesting when first starting to look at Lean and get some understanding of it, of what it can do, is looking at the Lean community blog. And that has not had very many updates recently with any news or statistics, new things or whatever. And I think people who are starting up, may tend to look at that and see what's, get an idea of what's hot or not. So that would be one area in the site that I think would be useful to emphasize additions. So
Sorry, I was about to write a post for the community blog about Fermat's last theorem, which I'm going to open on Tuesday. I don't know if you can hear me, sorry. There will be a community blog post soon, hopefully.
excellent.
I guess like in Lean 3 we had this month in MathLib blog posts. I wasn't very much involved with them. I think it was very much Johan and Patrick and some others. I'm wondering, like, are users of MathLib like wishing that we would do that again? Because like for me personally, like I skimmed them maybe a little bit, but yeah, they were for me personally maybe not that valuable, but maybe for like a lot of other people they are very valuable.
It gives a quick overview of the progress on various parts of the library, saying, "Oh, we've just had this theorem arrive," and so on. And I think that's, if presumably somebody who made the contribution would like it to be noticed and maybe incentivized to continue, and other people would say, "Oh, that looks like something useful. Let me try out something."
Maybe
David.
one way of removing the work from Johan and Patrick would be by if a merged PR gets an emoji, then we ask the author of the PR to write the line explaining what we've done.
David raised his hand. Go ahead, David.
Eric asked over in the chat, is Verso at a point where I would recommend trying to switch the community blog to it, or whether we should let us dog food it a little bit longer for our internal blog? And so I figured that was something that was worth mentioning more broadly than just over in the chat. I think that the website genre of it is by far the most mature one, because we've actually been using it to put things out for a little while, and it's probably at a reasonably early adopter ready state, but it's not a system that is at the moment easy to integrate with other things. So I think the question is, like, could it be used? Could it be ready to be used? Yes, reasonably so. But it would mean like a wholesale migration process, and I don't know if that's something you want to do. It might make more sense if you want to be getting the fancy highlighting and compiler integration stuff for me to instead make a sort of a special backend that'll spit out something you can include into the existing blog post, so you don't have to do a migration. And that's something that I could look into doing if there's demand for it. But either way, I'm happy to help out.
One of the issues with the this month in MathLab blog post is that I think it was a lot of work for Patrick and Johan, and it was difficult for them to keep that up. So I feel like we need some more like. I mean, like, if we can somehow set things up so that it's more like community members adding lines, and then there's a maintainer who's just like accepting these submissions, and then you press a button in order to release it at the end of the month, that feels a lot more doable. I'm trying to think of like other precedent for like like the This Week in Rust newsletter comes to mind, where there's a bunch of different contributors who are sort of sticking things into that, and then at the end of the week it's just someone who presses a button, and there's not a whole lot of running around to find the information, and most of the actual text is not written by the maintainer. Yeah, I think that solving that issue is an important component of being able to bring it back.
I don't know how feasible this is, but I'm wondering, like, I mean, certainly we need some sort of crowdsourcing to reduce the burden here. And I'm wondering if we could have authors who are writing PRs that they think are potentially worthy to go on the blog, if they could write some sort of short blurb, like maybe in the comment, like the after the horizontal line in the PR description, so it's not going in the commit, but that it would be easier to grab after the fact, just by going to that PR and copying and pasting that text.
Or
Even
even having a
easier is-
bot pick it up, right?
Yeah, potentially, sure.
Or another option is just to use a wiki page of Mathlib where people add a line, but maybe the fact that it's separate makes it a bit more.
Yeah, I think
Or
it
to-
being separate would just add a layer of complexity. I mean, we're it's sort of a trade-off. If we centralize it on the wiki page, then there's just one place that it's easy to go and grab stuff. But then it's another step that people have to do. So I don't know. I'm not sure which is better.
Yeah, I like the idea of having like an additional like bot comment kind of thing that goes into the PR description, or a comment, I suppose. And then, I mean, this is sort of like what GitHub will do for releases, right? There's like, you can ask it to auto-generate your release notes, and it will just take like the titles of all of the commits or the PRs and stuff them in a nice bulleted list, and that gives you the release notes. Like we could absolutely do something like that for yeah, this kind of summary stuff. Especially when it's like a newsletter, like you don't want to have a responsibility to write a whole lot. Like, I think that that's part of what makes this a difficult problem is like asking someone to write like a paragraph explaining what it is and why it does, and that sort of thing. That is work, and that somehow that shouldn't be the responsibility of like the editor of the whoever's producing these.
Well, yeah, and I think even a paragraph. I mean, I agree that that shouldn't be on the editor, but even a paragraph is more than we used to have. We used to have like maybe it was sometimes even just the PR title or descript or something like that, plus maybe one sentence. It wasn't more than that generally. Okay, if no one else has anything they want to say about the blog, maybe we could circle back around to PR review concerns or successes. See, I'm a little bit worried that the makeup that we have in this meeting does not consist of the people who have the worst experiences with PRs. All right. Well, I mean, I don't think we have anything else formally on the agenda. So, I mean, certainly if anyone's got anything else that they want to bring up or questions or anything, then it's certainly open for that as well. Go ahead, Justin.
Hi there. My name is Justin. I'm from the Ethereum Foundation. I'm very, very new to formal verification, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up because the Ethereum Foundation is looking to organize a very large formal verification competition to prove the correctness of so-called ZK EVMs. So these are these large arithmetic circuits that encode the logic of the EVM, which is a reasonably complex virtual machine, and this is used for scaling on Ethereum. And basically, these ZK rollups secure billions of dollars, and soon maybe tens or hundreds of billions of dollars. And we're very worried that they can lead to basically massive hacks on Ethereum. And so we're willing to put forward tens of millions of dollars in bounties to basically encourage the wider community to try and prove the correctness of these circuits. I was very intrigued by Lean and the community that it has around it. The fact that it has these calls, for example. If you'd like to get in touch with me, and that sounds exciting, I'm on Telegram. I'm Justin Drake, all lowercase, on Telegram. Also happy to answer questions now if it's appropriate.
Sorry, which foundation did you say you're a part of?
The Ethereum Foundation. So the Ethereum blockchain
Got
is, yeah.
Yeah.
You should probably post that in general, actually.
So what is general?
So the Zulip, there's a Zulip stream called General, which you can post all sorts of stuff. And
Actually, it may need to be an announce even. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a competition, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So Justin, just so we're clear, the announce stream is for just announcements. So generally what happens is you would have like a semi-formal announcement in the announce stream, and then there'd be a separate stream or a separate thread in the discussion or in the general stream for more discussion of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's a little bit too early to announce anything. Like, we're still working through the details of the competition. We're even looking for someone to help us run the competition. If you know anyone who could be appropriate.
Yeah, certainly in that case, posting in general makes sense.
Okay.
So I would like to ask something about Reservoir if the floor is open for that kind of things too, I guess. I mean, I'm just curious if there's a roadmap about, so one, maybe I'll explain what I'm talking about. So one thing that I noticed is there's sometimes someone comes up and like puts some nice thing in announce, right? Like, say, I don't know, I built this tactic or something like that. And then a lot of the times I remember, oh yeah, there was this interesting thing, but then you have to dig the Zulip thread to get back to that. And I presume that Reservoir is supposed to take over that so that you can kind of like discover more easily like things that are out there. But right now it's like, and I mean, I know that this is work in progress, but I was just curious if there's like a roadmap of like so that you can kind of browse things by some sort of categories or something like that, so that you could, like, for example, say I want proof automation for certain type of thing, then can I look at tactics or stuff like that?
There is plans for having categories akin to how Cargo does, where you would have things like labels for stuff like tactics and stuff like that. But I'm not exactly sure how that would translate to like the use case that you just mentioned about like something is mentioned in nouns and then it gets buried in Zulip. It's not like the direct translation of something I would think of that is like a blog or a listing of top notable packages or something like that, which at least that was not currently in the to-do list of Reservoir, because generally I don't know of a package registry that I can think of that generally has like, here's some things you should look at. Generally, it's very broad base of things like, as you mentioned, with labels or something like that. It might be worthwhile to have. That is an interesting idea that I've never really thought of before. To have some kind of like front page, here are some things you should look at, interesting things happening, kind of what's new and what should or what are some highlights of that are more curated and more Prosian in their description. That could be an interesting alternative, kind of like front page or like what's their like feeling lucky kind of style page. But yeah, that's something to keep in mind. But there is a plan for for labels. The other thing I think requires some more thought as to where and what that would be appropriate for.
Right. Cool. Yeah, just for reference, I was just kind of thinking out loud. That was like something that I've thought about a few times. Oh, I feel like I've lost this, and I thought it sounded like it's not that I even have a good idea of what would be the way to address that. Like what you're suggesting sounds cool, but I was more like thinking, oh, this is something I've noticed. And
yeah, I certainly agree. That is something I've noticed too. Is that the way that Zulip works, things get lost. Things unless there's like active discussion on a topic, it doesn't stay up, and only so many things can even be up in the first place. So kind of like important, like notable posts just kind of disappear. There isn't really a repository of notable things to look at. That is good.
All right, Matthew, go ahead.
So my question is how good of an idea is it still to have such tightly coupled hierarchies in different areas of mathematics? And if we were to move away to something more loosely coupled, what would that look like? And what kind of support would be needed for it?
What do you mean with hierarchies here? Do you mean the Mavlib as a library?
I mean, like, oh, I have, some ordered algebra analysis thing. And then when I do something like type class inference, or I have to do any kind of search, I have to go back and forth all the time between all of these. It starts looking through the algebra hierarchy when I just want some order statement. So is there a way to make them more loosely coupled in general as a design? What would that look like, and what kind of things would need to be supported to do that? Or I guess even is that a good idea to start with?
I mean, this is something that I've wondered about for kind of a long time. And in my head, whether or not this is actually valid as far as Lean's type class inference goes, in my head, it should make sense if there were, a few different ones, like an algebraic one, an order one, and like an analysis one, for example, or a topology and analysis one. And these would have like within them the data that they need, but then there would be separate prop mixins that would talk about the interaction between them. And I mean, it's a huge refactor. So this is part of why I haven't done it, and also why I haven't really tried to do it is I don't actually know if it would be effective, and I don't know that we currently have a good way to test it without just doing it. Adam,
Yeah, so concerning whether it's effective, I know for a fact that Johan has had similar thoughts and started actually doing some experiments to see if it would speed things up. I don't know how far he got with that. I helped him write some meta code, but I don't think that really went anywhere. So we should talk to Johan. He may
Okay.
have some experiments that he's done. But yeah, he was essentially trying to see if doing exactly what was suggested would be worthwhile, namely have classes just contain data and have all the props be mix-ins.
Yeah, and there was also some discussion today about like slow type plus inference, where like I suggested some like there's some basic classes like non-empty and subsingleton, finite and stuff, and there's a bunch of instances indeed that require like some specialized category theory or order theory or whatever to conclude these things, and so sort of type plus inference takes a very long time. So I think it would be nice to investigate something to limit that behavior by default, maybe through scoping some of these instances.
Where was this discussion today, Boris?
It's in the Mavlit stream. I'll link it.
Okay.
And when I say discussion, I mostly mean I suggested this as one solution to a problem of type plus inference being slow.
A naive question. Can you just, let's say you have a projection from some parent, can you just add an attribute scope to it and then you've hidden it, or is it already exposed and you have to kind of yank it back and then scope it? Because I tried the naive thing of just de-instancing it and then trying to scope it a while back for some of these parent projections, but it was still totally exposed when we imported the file. So
That is, I think, indeed the problem. I think if you're at extends, Lean automatically creates a global instance. And once you have a global instance, I don't think there is a way to globally get rid of it, only locally.
right, so you have to write some command that goes in and strips it out and then retroactively scopes it or something like this.
You presumably have to remove it from the extends clause entirely, unless you're saying modify Lean itself.
Well, no, I mean, you could actually remove it from the, I mean, as long as you're in the same module, you could actually write a global remove instance command. Just remove it from the relevant set. That does seem like the sort of thing that should be handled in Lean, though.
I look through
If
this.
it's possible to write that command, then we could also use it to remove the instances that aren't in the extends list at all. Okay, so this is Lean, I think 2905 or something, where it creates extra instances that you don't expect that aren't in the extends clause. And there's no way of removing them once they're created, but if you're saying we could build this global, if you remove the instance attribute, then that would be a way of testing this out in Mathlib.
go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt there. I mean, I looked through the core files and I couldn't find any. There's a lot of stuff about adding stuff. I couldn't find any basic deletions from these structures. So I'd be happy to be pointed towards some.
Yeah, no, it doesn't exist,
Okay.
but you could do it anyway, like with enough metaprogramming.
Yeah.
I mean, you mean it's just an environment extension that keeps track of the instances, right? So you can modify it in the same file. Is that what you mean, Mark?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some state that gets changed when you perform instance addition, and if you just remove the changes to the state, then as long as you do that before it gets written to an OLean and so on, then then it'll be as if it didn't happen. But yes, this is a little bit like not what Lean is designed to do. So if this turns out to be useful, then this definitely becomes a like Lean feature request, and there should be ways to get this supported more efficiently.
Yeah, so maybe I can add something from the Lean implementation side, since the issue has already been linked. So I mean, yeah, as people might know, typeless inference is one of the most complex and also fragile in many ways modules there is in Lean. So there are no simple changes to typeless inference at all. And yeah, even if something just does not look optimal in one case, just analyzing if this can be done in all the cases, what is affected and so on. It's an incredibly long process. So long story short, I just want to say, yeah, there are no guarantees about what issues can be addressed when it comes to these complex modules.
One thing I was thinking of when looking at that issue in particular is that for cases where you apply default instances or out parameters that assign types, you could have a place where you couldn't synthesize the instance at the moment. Like there is no found instance at the moment, but because of assignments later down the line, you can in fact find an instance. So kind of like jumping on Sebastian's, it might work in one place, but not in other places statement, is it might be possible that it's not always the case that, in the general case at the very least, that having not found an instance quickly doesn't mean that you won't find an instance long after you've done a lot of work, because type classes can have synthesis can have some form of side effects. I'm not sure if that is sufficiently discretizable to optimize in the obvious case that is mentioned in the issue.
Well, I don't want to just cut off discussion right now, but I did want to let everybody know that it's just 10. So, obviously, if you have to go somewhere else, you're welcome to. I can stick around for about another 10 minutes. Michael, did you want to say something about that issue 3996?
I can try to say something. So this, to me, this looks like a bug, but of course, I'm no expert at all regarding type class inference in Lean. But I think the effect is that in many cases, when you have type class searches that eventually fail, even though you could, in principle, realize that it has to fail fairly quickly, it still goes on to search basically the whole tree of instances. And so I would like to know if this really should be considered as a bug. And also, I mean, yeah, in this case, okay, in any case, I would like to know the effect of changing this behavior so that it doesn't occur. Because, I mean, having looked at a few cases at Mathlib, it seems that this really could have a very big effect on the time that's spent in type class search when building Mathlib. And so if we could avoid that, then possibly this would speed up Mathlib considerably.
Yeah, I mean, as functional behavior currently is not affected, it is probably more correct to, if it can be done, if there is a solution at all, to categorize it as a performance improvement. But yeah, regardless of what it is, what a kind of issue it is, everything I said before still applies. So yeah, this is something incredibly hard to change if it even makes, there even is a change that should be made.
All right. Well, seems like we've pretty much wrapped it up. So thanks everyone for coming and contributing to your thoughts.